All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today I'm talking about fly fishing for bluegill.
This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview conservationists, hunters, anglers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the greatest stories, information, and advice from the best in the world.
If you listen to past episodes, you can tell how not into fly fishing I was, because I was very intimidated by it. All I ever heard was how expensive it is, how, everybody's fly fishing in these exotic places. They're going to Colorado, Wyoming, even northern Michigan, all over the country, places that I don't live near. So for the longest time, I had no interest in doing any of this stuff. So my good friend Chester Moore went down to the Hunt Fish Podcast Summit this year. And he's like, dude, come down a few days early. We're going to go fly fishing. So I ordered a rod. I got this TFO NXT Black Label combo rod. And I basically casted it in my yard. I had never casted it on the water before I left for this trip, because I was kind of nervous of looking like an idiot out on the water. So had no experience going down there. I cast it in a field. Cast it at a park. My friend Seth and I went together, and he's doing some video stuff down there, and basically didn't know what we were doing. I bought a couple of books, bought an old Casting with Lefty Cray book online for a few bucks, read the basics, tried to figure it out. We're working on a little short documentary where you can see how terrible my casting was during that time period. And now I really enjoy it, because of the simplicity of it. I can put a fly rod in a small case, throw it in my car with the chest pack with a varying degree of flies on it for bass, bluegill. That's what I have readily available around me. And that's it. Simple. I can pull over. There's a pond across the street from my house I can practice at. There's little reservoirs dotting the area where I live I can go fish at. It's easy access, and it's easy to practice wide open spaces. So I've also, if you haven't noticed, been doing a lot of bluegill fishing. And bluegill fishing is traditionally, I'll say panfish in general, is traditionally bobber, sinker, hook, worm. Works. It's a known way to work. You can also use little micro crankbaits. Caught a bluegill on a very large crankbait, oddly enough, if you listen to the last episode I did. And I was thinking one day, I'm going to try fly fishing. I was waiting at Lake La Suan for my buddy to show up with his kayak. He was running late from work. I was like, I'm going to screw around with the fly rod and see if I can catch anything. I caught the biggest bluegill of my life on that fly rod. I flung it into the water. They're spawning. And this big bull bluegill, which I have a picture of if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll throw it up there, just bigger than my hand. And I have pretty big hands. So it got me thinking the next day I was going to be up at a lake that I've talked about a lot too on this show, with where my grandma owns a small cottage on a lake. And that's a great bluegill spot as well, panfish in general. And went up there that night. Was filleting the fish that I had caught the day that I was fishing on Lake La Suan. Up there I have one of those folding tables for fish filleting, which are a great thing. If you've never gotten one, they're awesome. They're cheap. They're tall. You can stand at it. You can knock out the fish in no time. So I'm filleting fish out there, and a lot of the guys up there, we all like to fish for panfish. It's what the lake is good for. There are decent bass in there, but nobody can ever seem to find them. So cleaning these bluegill, they're like, oh, where'd you catch those at? And I said, well, I was in a different state, caught these fish, brought them up here because I was coming up here anyway. It's been a hard bite this weekend. They're kind of spawning, but not really. And so I had planned on going out in the morning and grabbing my lightweight rod, worms, bobbers, going for it. And I was like, you know what? My wife usually goes fishing with me up there. She wasn't able to come up until later in the afternoon. So I was like, I'm going to take out this rowboat, no motor, no nothing. And I'm just going to silently go up and down the shoreline with my fly rod only. It's all I had in the boat. And I'm just going to go after panfish. And literally within the first 2 casts, was just hammering on them. And I don't know, you people talk about fish all the time. They recognize this lure, they recognize that lure. They're used to seeing this, so they're not going to bite. As many panfish as people take out of this lake, I doubt they're recognizing anything because they're constantly getting pulled in. So I'm fishing along the shoreline, a little bit deep. I'm just basically fan casting around the boat to see where they're at. And I'm using a fly that literally looks like a fly, like an actual fly. And they were hammering on it. I also used this little, I don't know what it's called because I haven't been fly fishing for very long, but it basically looks like a tube with a bunch of wiggly legs on it. And it was black and it had green legs. They absolutely destroyed those lures. They ripped one of the eyes off the fly. They snapped off 2 of those wiggly ones, which were my favorite lures. I can't find them anywhere around me, which sucks. So if you know where I can get some of those in Northwest Ohio, let me know. And absolutely annihilated them. I probably caught 25 fish easily in an hour and a half. And I kept 10 of them. I just worked up and down the shore. I had a mix of crappie, bluegill, red ear, shellcracker, whatever you want to call them, and came in, filleted them, get it over with. Same thing, guys are like, I can't get shit to bite. And I'm just thinking, like, I think I've found an application for when this is actually useful and not just a fun thing to do. And it could have just been a coincidence. I don't know. But everybody that I talked to was saying that they couldn't get them to bite on a worm and a bobber, having a hard time even on jigs. So that's why I wanted to do this initially. So I went out there and it was great. I had a blast. I actually stripped these flies so much that I rubbed a big friction mark in my hand and had a blister. That's how much fun I was having. So I am used to switching lures a lot, not for panfish though. I generally always fish the same way. So switching it up in all fishing situations seems to be a good idea to me. And I just caught a lot of fish, had a lot of fun. They're all in the freezer now. It was a successful tactic. And so if you are hesitant of fly fishing, you think it's hoity-toity like I did, there are practical applications for it. I love catching panfish. It's one of my favorite things. I love bass fishing too. Up here, it's 2 of my better options because you don't always need a boat to do that. So it's fun, and it is a good way to catch fish if nothing else is biting. And it's really not as hard as people make it out to be. I mean, I learned how to fly cast, I don't want to say well, but effectively in like a month. Really in a day when I went out for the first time in Oklahoma. I had never been on the water with a fly rod, and I would honestly recommend practicing with water in front of you because the tension that the line puts on the water makes it actually easier to cast it. Doing it in your front yard, the grass doesn't put any tension on it and you have shit blowing everywhere. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. So get out and try it yourself, especially with those finicky panfish that aren't biting. Give it a shot. You might be surprised, and it just is so much more fun to fight them. So I hope you guys got something out of this episode. I hope, maybe it changed the way you think about fishing for panfish a little bit. Go give it a try. Go get yourself a cheap combo off Amazon or something. $80 out the door. You can be out there screwing around for fly fish, making your buddies jealous, which is by and far one of the best feelings you can have as a fisherman, is when you go out there and nobody's catching anything and you're reeling them in. Hands down the best feeling on earth. You can hand me $1 million or tell me I just caught more fish than the guy next to me. Easily catching more fish than the guy next to me, but I won't refuse $1 million either way. So thanks for listening. Hope you guys got something out of this. We'll be back soon with another episode here very soon. Hey, thanks for listening to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. If you're getting anything out of this, if you're learning something, if it's helped you in any way, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. Throw me $1, throw me $2. We greatly appreciate it. Just using it to keep this ship afloat. So thank you very much.